with others in a spirit of respect. And so the book became deeper, it also became longer, and that's not an advantage, but it became a bigger project. And I'm grateful to have it now out in the world, and especially grateful to hear from these wonderful scholars in this beautiful room here in Belo Horizonte in Brazil. So thank you so much.
Well, that's great. Then let's keep our conversation here now with our great friend, colleague, Thomas Bustamante from this university. I need a mic.
Not that I'm going to say anything worth listening, but thank you. Let me just put my chronometer on so I can polish myself. I think that the measurement of success of a book is how much it can make you think. And I think this is a very successful book. It was especially interesting for me because over the past few years, I'm working, my main research project is how to apply inferentialism, philosophical inferentialism in law. And the point about inferentialism is an account of implicit norms. So I was fascinated, and I think that we can carry on. We can still work more on the implicit norms. So I imagined when I wrote my commentary that it would be 10 people in a very small room. And I would have more time, and I could circulate, so I printed 5 copies and said, we can all read together. But then it's a big room, a panel, closing the conference with 5 minutes. So that's a small sheet. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to read 2 pages of my draft. But I want to stress that I'm going to comment on something very specific. Because I agree with almost everything there's on the book, but I want to express the conditions of my agreement. I do not agree unconditionally. So I want to go on 2 things. First, I want to discuss implicit norms, then I want to discuss the judicial virtues and one virtue in particular. So let me begin, because I already lost 1 minute and a half. Conventional and inferentially articulated implicit norms. If there is one thing that distinguishes sapient beings like us from merely sentient creatures and measuring devices like parrots and thermometers, is the ability to put oneself under the authority of rational norms, like the laws of nature or the categories of understanding, which are necessary to make sense of our experience as beings in the world. Rationality is essentially a normative practice of employing norms for grasping the conditions of application and the circumstances of application of certain concepts. If these ideas are true, then no one can have any kind of knowledge or speak any language or learn anything from a previous experience without some mastery of implicit norms. To be a knower is to possess a practical ability of mastering implicit norms, a know-how, rather than a non-reflective grasp of something that is really given to our perception. The content of every norm, every concept, and the meaning of every experience that a human being can have is dependent on implicit norms. To be insensitive to these implicit norms is not merely to be in a state of error, but to be cognitively on a par with non-sapient creatures and measuring devices. And that is not all. It must be possible to make these implicit norms explicit for someone to have genuine knowledge of a certain fact. If you come to learn something through perception or an episode of experience, you'd better be able to put that learning in a conceptual form. That is, to explain what follows from it and what it follows from. At that point, I can imagine that the people in the audience who know me, and I'm sure there are some, might be thinking, quit lecturing Brandon on us again, Thomas. You only have 10 minutes, go straight to the point. Well, here's the point. Most implicit norms are not conventions, but categories, meta-concepts, numeral aspects of phenomena. To put it in a language that might scare some analytical philosophers while pleasing German idealists. Conventions are not categories or rational norms, presupposed to make sense of our experience. One can be rational without accepting conventions, and it might be the case that reason demands getting rid of certain conventions while retaining inferential entities and implicit norms that we use as premises in our reasoning processes. I'm using the word convention here in the predominant Lewisian sense. Conventions are a product of agreement or choice, rather than inquiry. They are arbitrary, and the mark of their distinctiveness is that they could have been in a different forms. Conventions are stipulated, positive if you wish, and they become normative, like customs and out of the force of habit, by a practical convergence that is at the same time their target, since their role is to coordinate the action of a multiplicity of individuals, and the source of their force, since they become binding by repetition. Because of this stipulated nature, conventions run out. A normative system made entirely of conventions look like a Swiss cheese. So I want to distinguish between conventions and inferential norms, because only the inferential norms do the work that you want them to do. So that's the challenge. Are the implicit norms to which Kavanagh resorts to explain her collaborative model of rights protection conventions in this predominant philosophical sense? I do not think they are, or can be. And there are passages in the book where it becomes clear that Kavanagh is assigning to implicit norms a role that no Lewisian convention is fit to play. She seems, I hope, to agree with me. She argues, for instance, that, I quote, at the deepest level, all constitutions ultimately rest on a commitment by the key constitutional actors to abide by the implicit norms of constitutional democracy under the rule of law, end of quote. Moreover, I quote, the implicit norms of collaborative constitutionalism are already inherent in constitutional practice to some meaningful degree, end of quote. Because understanding institutions involves understanding the ideal to which they aspire, end of quote. Which is an ideal filled out by implicit norms, because her idea of collaborative constitution is both grounded in practice and geared towards principle. But the most important thought lies in her statement that, I quote, the statement of the fundamental Hartian point that all legal systems ultimately rest on a commitment of the key constitutional actors to abide by the rules of the constitutional game and treat them as normative, end of quote. Kavanagh extracts from this pragmatic idea not only the thought that implicit norms stem from a practice of endorsing certain concepts and employing them as reasons in the judgments that as members of a social practice we put forward to one another to justify our claims, but also the crucial thought that she inherits from Matthias Kuhn that, I quote, I love that quote,